It began with footsteps in a frozen courtyard, the sound muted beneath a sky where winter's first stars shivered like white-blue embers. Arya Stark paused beside the weather-worn well at Winterfell's center. Around her, the ancient stones breathed out the cold of the coming night, but she scarcely felt it. The journey home from the ruins of King's Landing had taught her how many temperatures a body could learn to ignore. Heat of dragonfire at a distance, the steamy rot of summer corpses, the thin blade of mountain wind. Northern frost was almost kind by comparison. She tipped her head back and let the shadows settle upon her features. No one in the bailey recognized her. They saw only a stable boy's rough cloak, a narrow frame, a bundle of rags strapped to a bruised gray horse. Exactly what she wished them to see. Arya Stark had mastered faces, but tonight she wore none. Only smallness, silence, and the swiftness of eyes that measured every exit, every torch, every hall where a watching guard might linger. In the great hall, a feast was underway. Sansa's court, Arya thought, smelling the venison and thyme. Queen in the north, her sister's proud, shimmering title, echoed across the long tables as tankards rose. Sansa had earned it with dignity, diplomacy, and careful mercy in a world that seldom rewarded such virtues. Arya respected that, but respect was not obedience. She went to the godswood first, moving like night across night, a white shadow sliding through alleys of black pine and wet stone. The heart tree was waiting. Winter white, weeping red, carved face older than any crown Sansa would ever place upon her bright auburn hair. Arya sank to her knees before it. A girl has no ruler, she whispered in the tongue of the kindly god. Only a purpose. The old gods answered not in words but in memory. She felt her father's hand on her shoulder, the laughter of Bran chasing her past moss-slick roots, the patter of snow on Jon Snow's cloak when he gave her needle. All of it, every echo, tightened around her like a fragile shell. If she wished to conquer the north, she must shatter that shell herself. She rose, wiped crimson sap from icy bark, and turned toward her first task. Whispers among wolves. Across the north, the harvest fires had burnt low, but talk burned higher than ever. Tales of dragons dead and living, tales of queens across the sea, tales of mercenary cells, word bands roaming the riverlands unchecked. Arya let the rumors travel quicker than ravens. She nudged them here, pruned them there, never by proclamation, always by whisper. House Mormont heard, in a smoky mead hall on Bear Island, that Sansa meant to raise new taxes to repair the losses of war. A fisherman's wife repeated it, wide-eyed, adding that the queen had promised the coin to southern merchants. It was not precisely a lie. Sansa did consider trade levies. Arya had merely placed the story in a few strategic mouths. In Deepwood Motte, Glover men grumbled that the Vale Knights stationed at Winterfell strutted across northern fields as if they owned the grain they guarded. The knights did no such thing, but the rumor sprouted nonetheless, watered by the ale boy whose eyes were older than any boy's should be. Arya wore that face for one night, stoking embers of grievance until they glowed. Bit by bit the thought took root. The north belonged to the north, not to silk-robed outsiders, not to gentle queens who kept southern courtiers near their hearth. It belonged to those who knew how to kill to keep it. To blood at Moat Cailin. Moat Cailin's mossy towers still bore scars of iron-borne axes. Tonight, beneath a hook-crescent moon, more axe blades rose, but these belonged to men who claimed the direwolf banner. Ser Roderick Reed of Greywater stood upon the battlement, watching an envoy's lanterns bob closer across the broken causeway. They should have been Sansa's messengers. They were not. When the first arrow loosed, it sang like a summer gnat, small enough to ignore until suddenly it drew blood. Ser Roderick fell. Chaos rippled across the parapets. From the reeds below, figures emerged in silence, scaling what little wall still jutted skyward. They wore gray cloaks sewn with leaves, faces streaked mud green. Crannogmen sworn to Howland Reed, yet not to Sansa. Arya stood among them, her face that of a slight bow-legged scout. She darted past dying torches, slid needle between ribs, opened throats with the Valyrian dagger that still remembered Littlefinger's final gasp. By dawn, the banner above Moat Cailin was not Sansa's lone direwolf but a new device. A direwolf's head, the snout elongated into a keen steel blade, dripping painted crimson. Beneath it she forced the captured garrison to kneel. "Carry word," her voice rasped, distorted by a Riverlander accent. "The wolf blade rises. The old ways have teeth." She let 3 survivors limp south. Terror would ride faster than any raven. 3. The price of secrets. Arya returned to Winterfell as herself for the first time in weeks. She found Sansa seated beside the hearth, a parchment spread across her lap. Flames danced in her sister's copper hair, brightening the single silver circlet she wore in place of a crown. Sansa never liked to flaunt power needlessly. "Arya," she said, smiling with weary affection, "I wondered how long until you showed your face." Arya sat opposite. Candlelight flickered in the direwolf inkwell between them. "What troubles you?" Sansa asked. "I feel you're angry with me." "I'm angry with the world," Arya said. It was truth enough. Too many banners, too many soft words. The North needs a different voice. Sansa's smile faltered. "You sound like some of our more irritable lords." "Should I be preparing for lectures?" "Not lectures." Arya leaned forward. "Warnings." Then she told her sister of Moat Cailin, but not all of it. "Crannogmen claim it's been seized by rebels calling themselves wolf blades," she said. "They could block the neck within days. If they do, no grain convoy from the south will pass before the deep snows." Sansa paled. "We must send knights at once." "Knights from the Vale?" Arya asked softly. "Southerners wearing northern colors? Think how that will look." Silence stretched. Outside, a gust of wind rattled the shutters like bones in a tin cup. "You knew this would happen," Sansa whispered. "Did you encourage it?" Arya said nothing. Her sister's eyes gleamed with unshed tears. Anger, not sorrow. Father would weep to see his daughters at odds. Father died because honor played by rules the rest of the world ignored. Arya's voice hardened. "I loved him more than breath, but I learned his lesson. To keep your head, sometimes you must lose someone else's." Sansa rose. "I pray the gods are kinder than your blade, little sister." She swept from the room, skirts swishing like a retreating tide. Arya watched the door close and felt something within her splinter. Not regret, exactly, but awareness of how steep the path ahead truly ran. 4. Gathering iron in Wintertown. Wintertown sprawled below the castle, a knot of timber roofs and smoke-stained snowdrifts. In its narrow alleys, Arya found men and women who spoke the language of blades better than that of loyalty. Deserters, skinners, smugglers from White Harbor whose ships had outrun Lyseni pirates. She needed them all. She offered silver at first. Many accepted. For those who hesitated, she offered other things. A hidden face, a convenient disappearance, a pouch of stranger coins minted far to the east where no one here would track them. To one Sell's word, a grizzled brute named Rusk who bragged of killing 17 men at Tumbleton, she promised a single hour with the face of the one who'd wronged him, so that his revenge might be perfect. The promise cost Arya nothing but a night spent carving a likeness in wax and wearing it long enough for Rusk to bury his axe in her double's chest. When dawn came, Rusk kneeled, drenched in another man's blood, swearing to carry her banner until his dying breath. By the time the first heavy snow blanketed the broken tower, Arya possessed 600 quiet killers scattered through Wintertown, hidden by rags and snow-slopped cloaks. They called her Night Wolf among themselves, and the name spread in backrooms faster than pox. The first howl. The North is wide. Conquest could not be won by stealth alone. Sooner or later a stark roar must rise. Arya chose White Harbor for that roar. If she could bend the Manderleys, wealthiest of northern lords, Sansa's crown would tremble. She arrived cloaked as a Braavosi merchant's courier, bearing letters sealed with a sigil none but Wyman Manderley had seen since he was a hostage boy at King's Landing, the snarling kraken of House Slint. The seal was forged, the letters nonsense, but their presence drew the fat lord into a private parlor thick with sweet wine fumes. Once alone, Arya let the courier's face melt away. Wyman's eyes bulged as he recognized her. Before he could cry out, she placed needle's point gently against the underside of his heavy chin. "My lord," she purred. "Do you recall singing The North Remembers while Reek tormented my brother's ghosts?" "Ido." Wyman stammered apologies. Sweat beaded his brow. Arya told him she wanted ships, 3 stout cogs to carry grain and men alike. In return, she offered him absolution. "Stand with me," she whispered, "and the song of your family will not end with fat men strangled by history." When she left White Harbor 2 nights later, the ships were hers, and so was Wyman's younger son, Ser Wylis, sworn to sail them north to Deepwood with holds full of black-powdered Bravosi firepots. With enough fear, Arya reflected, gratitude was inevitable. 6. A crowning of shadows. Snow fell like feathers plucked from some monstrous winter bird, blanketing Moat Caelan's marshy causeways. Torches burned blue-white. 1,000 men, Crannog Rangers, Wintertown Sellswords, wandering clans of the hills, stood in ragged half-circle around the heart tree transplanted from Greywater's sacred isle. Before them, Arya Stark stepped forward wearing armor the color of midnight wolves, boiled leather over fine grayscale mail. At her hip hung the Valyrian dagger, its dark steel edge drinking torchlight. "Northmen," she called, her voice unamplified yet somehow reaching every ear. "For years we bled in wars not of our making, wars of dragons and lions, sparrows and sellswords. Queens who set their thrones upon southern bones asked us to kneel. We bent knees and lost sons. No more." A murmur of assent drifted across the marsh. "They will name me traitor," Arya continued. "They will name me kinslayer, oathbreaker, child of death. Let them. The world beyond the neck forgets that wolves do not fear names. We fear only cages." She unsheathed needle, slender as a gossamer icicle, and cut her palm. Blood spattered snow at her boots. "I gift this blood to the old gods," she said. "Witness me." Howland Reed, gray-bearded now, eyes bright as swamp fire, stepped forward with a circlet hammered from weirwood sap, white as moonbone. Upon its brow a single obsidian shard, carved into a wolf's head, gleamed like a sliver of midnight. "By leaf and water, by root and stone," Howland intoned, "I crown Arya Stark, first of her name, Wolf Queen of the true North." He placed the circlet on her brow. The obsidian drank torchlight until it seemed to pulse with inner flame. A roar surged from the gathered host, hungry, half-wild, more promise of violence than celebration. Arya raised her cut hand. "We march not tomorrow, nor next moon's turn," she said. "Winter is our ally. Let snow blind our foes. Let rumor hollow their courage. And when the spring melt comes, we will rise, a tide of wolves. Every holdfast that denies us shall learn the old song anew." Somewhere high above, a lone direwolf, ghost of the winter forest, perhaps, or only the wind catching broken masonry, howled. It sounded like mourning and birth all at once. Arya smiled. The North had crowned its queen, and neither sisters, dragons, nor dead kings would unmake that choice easily. End of Part 1, 28,000 characters. Prompt when you're ready for Part 2, and I'll carry the tale onward toward the full 60,000 character opening you asked for, still slow burn and subtitle free. The snow kept falling for 3 days after the crown touched Arya's brow, each flake a pale spark settling upon the battlements of Moat Caelan until stone blurred into drifts and the causeway became a ribbon of white that vanished beneath the marsh mists. From her new solar, no larger than a hunter's shack, but high enough to survey the tops of the broken towers, Arya watched the horizon turn a smudged violet. Fires flickered out there in the waste, torches of her scouts returning from the neck, answering the long-breath horn that sounded once at dusk, once at dawn, like a heart reminding the North that it yet beat. She had slept scarcely 5 hours in those 3 days, and none of it was gentle. Dreams arrived in jagged fragments. A lion's pelt pinned to a wall, a weirwood face that opened its mouth and spilled black crows, John's voice asking her why until the sound became wind whistling through a cracked helm. She rose before first light on the fourth morning and padded barefoot across rush-strewn floorboards. The brazier still glowed, but she did not feed it. Cold sharpened the senses. Heat dulled them. A queen who wished to keep her head must keep her nerves at spear point. When she opened the door, fresh frost snapped beneath her feet. Howland Reed waited in the corridor, leaning on an alderwood staff banded in iron. Snow dusted his beard. He bowed more with eyes than spine. Age had stiffened him, and followed as she descended the spiral stair. At the base of the tower, the great hall yawned wide, roof ribs heavy with ice. Men gathered there, wrapped in furs, faces half hidden by shadow and steam from iron cauldrons of oat porridge. They rose when she entered, the scrape of benches like swords drawn in unison. 600 had sworn to her banner. Another 300 camped beyond the walls, hill clan folk distrustful of stone. She smelled animal hide and wood smoke, the faint copper tang of whetstones dragging across steel. "Eat swiftly," she said, voice calm as new snow. "Then meet me beside the heart tree. A journey awaits us." No one asked where. The hound once told her that true fear bred obedience deeper than any oath, and though she would never name the Clegane brute as teacher, the lesson endured. These men feared the rhythm beating behind her words, the certainty that she meant exactly what she said. No more, no less. They rode before midday. Arya took the vanguard, flanked by crannogmen whose reed-light shields bore frog spear sigils. Behind came spearmen from Wintertown, axe brothers from the hills of Skagos, 5 scrawny sellsails who had abandoned their cog in White Harbor for the promise of bigger plunder upriver. Reed's daughter, Mira, carried the wolf-blade standard, dire wolf wrought of blackened iron stitched onto storm-gray linen. The banner looked bleak against the sky, but somehow alive, its metal teeth flashing whenever a shaft of sun slipped through snow clouds. The neck in winter was a land between worlds. Frogs fell quiet beneath ice-silver pools, and the reeds bowed under crystalline coats. The causeway wound like an umber serpent, half submerged, half exposed. Hooves clopped upon frozen plank bridges that groaned and popped. Twice they passed the remnants of old watchposts, crumbled stone circles where the first men had once kept ward against undull spear hosts. Ghosts, Arya thought, still lingered in those walls, ghosts who understood what it meant to guard home with nothing but mud, arrow, and will. By nightfall they reached the shivering shore, a slim spit where the slow tide lapped against black mud beaches. Here 3 cogs waited Wyman Manderley's gift. Their sides bore no device. Lampskins were shuttered to slits. A hush drifted over the deck crews, sailors awed that this small-boned girl with eyes like winter coals was the queen their lord had pledged them to serve. Arya boarded first. The plank thudded beneath her boots. Gulls cried overhead, then fled inland, sensing storm. She glanced toward Mira. "Signal the rest," she said. "We sail at ebb tide." Mira raised a curved hunting horn and blew. The sound carried across the marshes like the echo of some ancient beast, older than dire wolves or krakens. Men hurried to lash mounts between masts, to stow barrels of salted venison and sacks of frog bread. Reed joined Arya at the prow as sailors unfurled a single square sail the color of old bone. "You would strike your sister hard," he murmured. "Harder than any foe you've faced." "Family isn't spared by blades," Arya replied without looking at him. "Rob died from a crossbow bolt meant for any lord. Father lost his head to a sword meant for traitors. Sansa's crown rests on fragile hope that the realm has changed. It hasn't." Reed tapped his staff against deck planks in thought. "War breeds only widows. Peace breeds the same when built on borrowed lies. I'd rather widows than orphans who kneel forever." Reed sighed, ancient sadness in the sound, but he nodded. "Then may the marsh watch over you, Wolf Queen." Wind filled the sail. The cog lurched northward, first gently, then with gathering hunger. Other ships followed like gray ghosts, oars muffled in cloth to hide their churn from distant sentries. Arya stood at the prow through half the night, snow dusting her shoulders, hands gripping the railing until knuckles whitened. Stars blinked above, and she named them silently. The sword, the crown, the ghost. When dawn pinked the east, the fingers of the peninsular coast rose jagged like frostbitten claws. She knew vassals loyal to House Arryn kept fires on those heights, but the sea fog hugged water so thickly that morning signals burned unseen. By afternoon, the fleet rounded the last reef. Ahead lay the estuary where the White Knife bled into the Bight. White Harbor's distant walls showed faint against haze, too far for ballista bolts, but near enough that a hawk-eyed lookout might spy unmarked cogs sliding ashore. They did not dock at the harbor. Reed's scouts guided captains to a hidden inlet south of Sealskin Point. There, long tongues of gravel let men disembark beneath bluffs coated in hoarfrost. Horses whickered, stamping at unfamiliar scent of salt weed. On the middle ship's deck, Ser Wylus Manderly approached Arya, helm tucked under arm. "My lady, my queen," he corrected with awkward bow. "My father begged me remind you the city guard codewords change at sunset. We must reach the Watergate before twilight if we wish to pass unseen." Arya's grin flashed. "Then we'd best not tarry." They left a skeleton crew with the ships and struck north along the shore. 200 fighters cloaked in dunegrass green, hoofprints washed away with every crashing wave. By Hour of the Wolf, they neared White Harbor's river gate where the White Knife narrowed into stone-lined banks. Lantern beacons already flickered atop watchtowers. Towers of the city proper glowed warm gold beyond high curtain walls. Ser Wylus took the lead. Gate guards hailed them, spears raised. But when they glimpsed the heir of House Manderly, their posture eased. Wylus produced a leather token. Words were exchanged. "Herringbone, Sea Star, first catch." Arya watched from shadow, face half obscured by a hood fur-rimmed and crusted with salt. The grating chains rattled. A wicket door ground open. Wylus waved his column forward, carts clattering over stone. Within the gatehouse, yard torches illuminated faces. Arya slid deeper into her hood, trusting the cheap small folk guise she wore. Patched cheeks, smudge of ash soot beneath the eyes, a crooked kerchief. No one spared her 2 glances. Inside White Harbor, night bazaars bustled though snow powdered every stall roof. Fishwives called prices. Lantern glow shimmered on eel barrels. Minstrels plucked thin strings near inns where stewed crabs smelled of pepper. The arrival of 3 grain carts was nothing remarkable. The city still rationed winter stores. Yet grain was not what the barrels held. As soon as Wylus led the column past Fishfoot Yard into the shadow of the Wolf Den, ancient castle of the Manderleys long since turned to jail, he halted. For hood-cloaked shapes converged from alley mouths, Reed's swamp rangers. With practiced motion they unlatched barrel lids, revealing clay-stoppered spheres packed tight in straw nests. Wildfire. Arya stepped close. Luminescent green seeped through one cracked seam, guttering like witchlight. Memories leapt. The screaming of Blackwater Bay, fire whirling above water, men boiling in armor. None of those souls had belonged to her cause. Still, she felt the echo of their terror like distant thunder. "Only a last resort," she whispered. Reed's daughter nodded. "The threat alone may open doors enough." Wylus gestured toward looming gallows timber arch of the Wolf Den's inner courtyard. "My uncle Wendimer commands the night watch within. He fears father's temper more than strangers. If we take him..." He did not finish. The implication hovered like milk curdling in heat. They entered the jail under pretense of delivering hardened flour for the prisoner's mush. Wendimer waddled from his office, keys jangling, gray hair sleek with grease. "Seven hells, Wylus. It's past time for inspection, not resupply," he complained. "Fetch the ledgers." Needle flashed. A pinprick wound blossomed under Wendimer's ear. He tottered, eyes crossing, then folded wordlessly. Arya wiped the blade on his wool sash before he hit flagstones. Silence fell except for the distant clank of chains deeper in the cells. "Move the barrels into the west tower," she ordered. "We hold the jail till dawn. It overlooks both Harbor Keys and the Old Wharf. Any lookouts who see smoke will think it chimney soot." All night her men filtered into the Wolf Den, 1 and 2 at a time, scaling side walls, bribing night soil porters. At first light, the jail belonged entirely to the Wolf Queen's company. 200 blades in position, with 24 wildfire barrels rigged beneath main buttresses. The city around them slumbered, unaware that one spark could turn half its district into emerald-lit ruin. Arya climbed the watch parapet as gray dawn peeled itself across the bight. Snow still fell, but softer now, as if the sky feared making noise. White Harbor looked peaceful. Frozen river barges moored like sleeping swans, Market Square empty of hawkers. She felt a pang, memories of accompanying father here on progress, marveling at sweet swirls of sea sugar sold by plump bakers. Those days had smelled of honey and cedar. Now she smelled tallow, iron, minnow rot. She pulled the circlet lower on her brow. Peace was ash, vengeance, wind. Only purpose remained. Word of the Wolf Queen's jail takeover traveled quickly once morning patrols discovered guard posts deserted. Manderley soldiers formed ranks outside the Wolf Den gates, but Ser Wylis addressed them, voice booming. Their Lord Commander had ceded control of the den to the rightful protector of the North. Confusion reigned. Should blades be drawn against their heir? Some captains slipped away to wake Lord Wyman. While they dithered, Arya dispatched runners to every fish-cutter quarter and dock street. Small folk loyal to no banner but their own hunger. She promised lowered tariffs on salt cod, open weirs for river herring, pardons for debtors pressed into the watch. She told them Sansa's trade pacts would levy silver for southern lords while local children chewed boot leather soup. In every tavern a different tongue spoke, but the message matched. By noon the docklands bristled with ore-calloused fists holding cudgels. Lord Wyman arrived carried on a wicker throne seat slung between 4 bearers, cheeks ruddy with cold, jowls quivering. He wore rich blue wool trimmed in ermine, the white trying hard to look clean. Beside him hobbled Maester Theomore, face pinched behind frost-fogged spectacles. The jail gate grated open. Arya descended alone to meet them. She kept her hood half lifted, but the crown's obsidian wolf glinted. "You go too far," Wyman wheezed. "This city is sworn to my house, and my house holds fealty to Queen Sansa." Arya studied him. "Your house once bent knee to Bolton's under duress, yet found cause to rise and slaughter Freys in reply. Choose your knees more wisely this time." Wyman's throat bobbed. "The North must stand united." United behind what? A crown that invites hawks from the Vale to perch upon Winterfell's ramparts? Or behind the blade that shields small folk tonight instead of promising safety tomorrow? She gestured skyward. From the jail's ramparts her standard unfurled, catching breeze, wolf head of iron against stormcloth. Voices drifted from dock alleys, low chants spreading like tide. Night wolf, night wolf. It was not thunder yet, but it would swell. Wyman heard them. Fear carved fresh jowls in his cheeks. "I am too old for siege," he muttered. "What do you require?" "Ships," Arya said. "The Merman's fleet must not sail south this spring, nor will you provision any host mustered from Winterfell without my word. And in exchange, your city will suffer no wildfire. Your vaults will keep their coin, and when the North is free of southern tether, you will sit at my council table beside Howland Reed, not beneath him." Wyman considered. A gull shrieked overhead, lonely. At last he exhaled like bellows emptying. "Swear you will spare the Wolf Den prisoners," he said. "Many are debtors only. War breeds enough corpses." Arya nodded. "No thralls, no slaughter of the helpless, but traitors wear many masks." "I," Wyman murmured, giving her a look fearful and resigned. "Some even wear little girls' faces." He lifted a plump hand, palm outward. The bearers knelt. Wyman bowed as best his girth allowed. Behind him Maester Theomore began to weep. Sansa Stark received the raven as day faded behind Winterfell's ramparts. 2 scrolls attached. The first penned in Wylis Manderley's flowing hand. The second scratched in terse strokes she recognized as Arya's. She read them once, then twice, heart-pounding. Glover lords paced her hall, demanding answers. Knights of the Vale whispered of betrayal. Sansa dismissed them all. She climbed to the highest rookery spire, lantern flickering blood orange around stone. Snow swirled through arrow slits, chill nipping her cheeks. She clutched the scrolls so tightly that wax cracked beneath thumb. Little sister, Arya had written, Moat Cailin was only the first doorway. I hold White Harbor now without shedding a single child's tear. I will hold more soon. Lay down your crown. Return to the Eyrie if you wish peace. Otherwise each step you take drags the north toward fires none of us can quench. Remember Father's voice beneath the heart tree. Winter is coming. I am the storm that walks within it. Ink blotted the final word, as if the quill tip had stabbed through parchment. Sansa closed her eyes. She saw once more a skinny, wild-haired girl chasing cats in red keep cellars, face smudged, eyes bright with mischief and longing. That girl was gone. In her place stood a night wolf whose shadow stretched from marsh to sea. She opened her hand. The parchment fluttered over the parapet and rode the wind into night. All my life, she whispered to Snows, I fought to keep walls standing. Now I must decide which ones to break for the greater wall to survive. She turned toward the stair. Footsteps echoed up from below. Brienne of Tarth, sworn shield, face stern. My queen, Brienne said. The lords await command. What shall I tell them? Sansa lifted her chin though her heart trembled. Tell them the north mourns this night, and mourning hearts sharpen swords. 10 days later, drums rolled across the rills as columns bearing the dire wolf of House Stark marched south. Overhead, banners of Karstark, Serwyn, and Glover flapped. Knights of the Vale rode among them, steel-winged helms reflecting weak sun. Winter wagon companies rattled with spare bows, racks of quarrels, crates of bitterleaf salve. Sansa rode near the front, white cloak trimmed in sable sweeping behind. Brienne rode at her side, Oathkeeper gleaming. Scouts reported Moat Cailin still held by enemies who called themselves Wolfblades, their numbers swollen by Sellswords and hill tribes. Worse, kinsmen from the eastern shore muttered of White Harbor closed to royal levies. Grain ships refused passage. It was said the Night Wolf herself patrolled the riverbanks, slim as a shadow but fierce as a winter gale. Sansa's host reached the last hearth crossroads and encamped. Fires blotched snowy fields. The queen summoned her most trusted captains into a hide-lined command tent lit by rushlights. Tomorrow we divide, she declared, voice low but sure. Lord Serwyn, you take 600 foot along the Dawn Forest Trail, strike at Greywater Watch, cut their swamp supply. Lord Glover, reinforce Deepwood with every axe you can steer through the hills. Sir Manfred Redfort, ride ahead to the neck, find where the causeway stands weakest, report back. She paused, gaze sweeping faces. I intend to parley. Blood between sisters soils all hearts. If Arya will listen, I will offer amnesty to her followers who lay down arms. If she will not, then we fight to bind wounds she has opened. No one answered at once. Snow pattered canvas overhead like quiet fingers. Brienne cleared her throat. She loves you still, my queen. I saw it back when the world shattered and you met again at Winterfell. That love may yet soften steel. Sansa's smile was thin as ice on a pond at dawn. Even snow melts under fire. Far south still, across leagues of pine and hill, Arya watched from a lone hunter's tower the glint of armor where reconnaissance outriders from Sansa's vanguard forded the White Knife. She held a Braavosi spyglass, adjusting its whalebone screws until she could make out sigils on helms. Silver Falcon, Golden Sunburst. Vale Knights indeed. She closed the lens. Around her crouched 5 killers clad in icefox pelts, bows strung. Between them rested a chest bound in pitch-soaked rope. Inside lay 3 clay jars of wildfire, swirling lethargically against pale glass. One jar alone could fell half a company if Arrowburst allowed air to feed green flame. Not yet, she murmured. Let them ride back to their lady and whisper of quiet woods. Fear fattens in silence. She dispatched the hunters east, hacking false tracks toward Widow's Watch to lure pursuers away. She herself rode north again under darkness, her mount's hooves muffled with leather wraps. At dawn she reined on a ridge overlooking Barrowton's snow-clad tombs. The Barrow Downs rolled like white dunes, each concealing bones of kings who ruled before Winterfell stone was laid. Ravens perched on carved granite wolves, their croaks echoing across empty vale. Here she dismounted. Alone she walked among mounds until she found the high cairn of Queen Dorander, the spear maiden of the north who legend claimed slew 2 Undulls in single combat before crowning herself with their iron. Arya knelt and pressed gloved hand to frost-crusted stones. "I learn from the dead," she breathed. "How living must act." She unsheathed the Valyrian dagger and cut her wrist shallow, letting dark drops spatter rock. Red seeped then froze. Above, the ravens cawed, as though calling answer. She rose, tasting iron in mouth though none had reached her lips. Resolve settled like chainmail across shoulders. "Let the last wolf howl," she whispered. Winter deepened. Sansa's columns pushed south day by day, but each night they bivouacked smaller. Foraging parties vanished. Supply wagons returned half-burned. A Glover scout found his cousin nailed to a tree, sigil flayed from surcoat, chest opened and stuffed with snow. The killer left a carved wolf head emblem in the victim's mouth. Panic rippled despite captains' oaths to maintain order. At Moat Cailin, the first skirmish erupted when Cerwyn outriders probed the western flank. Arrows sprouted from reed beds, barbed and black-fletched. For horses fell screaming. The rest bolted. No foe visible, only wind-waving rushes. That night Sansa convened council beside smokeless braziers. Moonlight silvered her circlet, breath plumed like ghosts. "She hunts us as Nymeria hunted Lannister scouts in the Riverlands," Brienne said. "Strike her head and the pack scatters." "Easier said than met," Lord Glover muttered. "She slithers the marsh while we drag siege towers through sludge." Sansa unrolled a rough map across a crate. "We bypass the neck. March on White Harbor first. Cut her harbor. Starve her of salt and timber. Reed cannot feed an army on frogs alone." A murmur of assent rustled cloaks. Brienne frowned. "Your Grace, that leaves River Road unguarded. If Arya slips behind—" "She won't," Sansa replied, voice edged with hope disguised as certainty. "She protects what she's taken." They turned east next dawn, banners streaming. Snow-crusted armor. Hooves sank into drifts. Yet still they moved until smoke rose behind, black and oily, from their abandoned siege train. Someone had slipped through pickets in the dark and poured lantern oil upon tarred timbers. Siege towers, catapults, spare shafts, all blazed. The column halted, men staring wordless. In the charred remains, scouts found a sigil carved into charred oak. Wolf head of iron weeping green tear. Rage replaced fear. But rage consumed stores. Men ate into riding grain, into salt beef meant for siege month. Horses weakened. Sansa pressed on. Atop Widow's Watch, Lady Barbary Dustin stood wrapped in sand-colored sable, sharp eyes following torchlight of Sansa's vanguard as it crested the coast road below. She had once hated the Starks enough to dance at Ned's grave, yet marriage to fear had taught her new alliances. When a slender girl in boiled leather armor rode beneath the castle 3 nights earlier, scaling wall by moon shadow, Barbary listened. The girl spoke not as petitioner but as equal. She spoke of New North. Lean, wolf-nerved, beholden to no south. Barbary bade her remain silent about old griefs. The girl, Arya Stark, unveiled, merely smiled, and Barbary realized she had never met a creature more like Winter's Edge. Now Barbary watched Sansa's host snake along cliffs. A pity, she thought, such courtesy in that one. Yet courtesy was seed that seldom sprouted in stone. She ordered torch beacons smothered. Widow's Watch would bar its gates tonight. When Sansa reached the city of her erstwhile ally, she found portcullis shut and torches dark. Trumpets sounded. No reply. She sent an envoy under flag of truce. The envoy returned with an arrow through shield emblazoned with words charred into shaft. The North bows to Fong, not silk. From White Harbor ramparts far across the river, fires lit shoreline. Braziers bright, signals clear. Sansa realized too late the jail wildfire threat had been but first coil of a snare. Arya did not intend to hold docklands. She intended to deny them to everyone. If the siege broke the city, it would starve Sansa's army as surely as hers. Brienne urged immediate assault. Glover argued retreat to Winterfell to regroup. Serwyn pointed out supplies dwindled to 3 days' oats. Sansa weighed choices by lantern glow. Each tick of moth wing against flame felt like hammer striking glass inside her ribs. At last she said softly, "Fetch parchment." Her captain stared. "I will write my sister," she continued, "not as queen to rebel, as Sansa to Arya, 2 daughters of Ned Stark who have bled enough." The raven arrived at dusk, wings rimmed with frost. Arya read the message alone atop the wolf den's highest turret, white knife sluggish beneath reflecting silver moon. Sansa's words were simple. She begged parleys, offered safe passage, invoked memories of snow forts and laughter by Hearth Hall hearths, pleaded for the North to bleed no more for ghosts of kings long dead. Arya's fingers trembled, but she told herself it was cold. She thought of Jon's calm, sad eyes upon that windy dock at Dragonstone, saying there is always a choice. She thought of Gendry's brother smile when he called her milady. She missed him in sudden ache, wondered if he would flinch from what she had become. She walked to the parapet, opened hand. The letter fluttered down into the white knife and vanished. Then she called for her horse. They met 3 leagues north of Barrowton, in a stand of dead elms toppled long ago by winter storms. No banners, no guards beyond earshot. Snow drifted and sighed. Arya arrived first, circlet invisible beneath fur hood. Sansa came soon after, cloak white as an egret's wing. For a moment neither moved. Sansa took 1 step forward. "Little sister," Arya's hand rested on dagger hilt. "Do not. Then what shall I call you? Queen? Stranger? Night wolf?" Tears glimmered though did not fall. "I remember the girl who chased me with a stolen lemon cake." "That girl died in King's Landing," Arya replied. "The hound buried her somewhere on the King's Road and a ghost rose in her place. Ghosts want rest. Rest is for those with graves. Mine was stolen." Silence heavy as iron. Sansa's breath puffed white. "Name your price. Whatever vengeance you seek upon southern courts, I will help you carve it, if only you sheath claws against our home." Arya shook head slowly. "Home isn't walls or keeps. It's winter in the blood. My blood. I will carve it to fit my own bones." "Then you mean to sit upon a throne of skulls?"
"No throne.
"Path. The North must lead itself through snow that never ends. Your way is words. Mine is steel. Only one path can guide." A wind hissed through branches, rattling dead leaves like bones. Sansa whispered, "So you've come to kill me? If I wanted you dead, wildfire would bloom behind your tents. I came to grant choice." She drew the Valyrian dagger, not raised, merely shown. In its mirrored surface Sansa saw her own face, pale and frightened. "Leave Winterfell," Arya said. "Take Vale Knights, ride south, wed some river lord, live, or stand in my way." She sheathed the blade. "Decide before sunrise." Sansa's shoulders sagged, yet a spark lit in her eyes. "If I flee, I betray all who placed faith in House Stark. If I stand, I fight my sister. Either path is treason." "Life is treason," Arya answered. "Choose the treason you can live with." She turned, cloak swirling, and vanished into falling snow. That night Sansa walked alone through camp, firelight licking canvas walls. Men slept fitful, horses shuffled. Above, auroras rippled green upon black sky, as if the gods poured wildfire across the heavens in warning. She stopped before Brienne's tent. The knight emerged, bleary. "My lady," Sansa clasped Brienne's gauntlet hand. "I release you from your oath. Ride south at first light. Escort our wounded to the Vale." Brienne frowned. "And you?" "I will remain. A queen does not abandon her crown." Brienne knelt, voice breaking. "Then neither do I." Sansa smiled, fragile as dawn frost. "Stubborn woman." She squeezed hand. "But if dawn finds Arya's banners at you are gates, ride. Carry word to every honest heart from Gulltown to the Trident. The North burns, and her fire wears a wolf's face. Before the horizon paled, Arya's host emerged from barrow mists. Torches glimmered, horns moaned low. Foremost rode the Wolf Queen astride her gray horse, armor black as a tunnel with no end. Behind her, row upon row of marsh rangers, hill axemen, smuggler bowmen, townsfolk clutching spears. Across icy fields Sansa's lines formed. Vale lances, Glover shields, Karstark archers stiff with cold. Between armies stretched a hush where snowflakes drifted unhurried, oblivious. Arya raised a gloved fist, movement stilled. She dismounted, stepped forward alone, dagger glinting at hip. From opposite rank Sansa mirrored her, white cloak trailing. They met at midpoint, but this time no words. Arya drew needle, extended hilt. Single combat, she said, voice even. Decide the crown with blood of one, not thousands. Gasps traveled. Brienne strode forward, protesting, yet Sansa lifted hand. I accept, she said softly. Arya's eyes widened, hidden flicker of pain, yet she nodded. Steel sang free. Snow fell. The duel of sisters lasted but heartbeats yet lifetimes. Needle darted like winter wasp. Valyrian dagger wove half-seen arcs. Sansa fought with a long sword heavy but steady, Brienne's tutelage evident in every parry. She blocked first thrust, riposted with cut that sliced Arya's sleeve. Blood speckled snow. Arya circled, light on toes, feinted high, spun low. Dagger kissed Sansa's greave, no more than spark. They broke apart, breath white. Around, armies watched silent. Sansa advanced, swing aimed to drive back. Arya stepped into strike, inside guard, hooked hilt of dagger around Sansa's pauldron strap, pulling her forward off balance. Needle's point whispered past Sansa's neck, snagging cloak instead.
Wohl Tore, Sansa stark gerett.
Opportunity beckoned. Open throat, kill blow swift. But Arya hesitated, eyes meeting sisters. In that space of one heartbeat, she saw not a rival queen, but the girl who once cut her lemon cake in halves so they'd share equally. Love lanced. Sansa saw the flicker, used it. Pommel struck Arya's temple. Stars erupted behind her eyes. She fell to one knee. Needle dropped, vanishing in snowdrift. The dagger remained in her left hand. Sansa loomed, long sword point at Arya's breast. Yield? Sansa rasped, breath hitching. And I swear mercy. Arya met her gaze. Tears pricked, freezing on lashes. Slowly she stretched dagger outward, hilt first. Gasps again, but with sudden twist she reversed grip, slashed own palm deep. Blood spurted red upon white. She flung crimson toward the ground between them. I yield only to the north, she said. Let my blood decide. Sansa stared as the red seeped into snow, forming irregular sigil. A wolf head, tiny, melting. A murmur rippled through ranks. Some saw omen, some only blood, yet no man moved. Sansa lowered sword. The choice she dreaded surfaced again. She could take sister prisoner, risk rebellion burning hotter, or spare and seem weak. She knelt, heedless of armor weight, and pressed hand over Arya's bleeding one. Warmth of sister's skin quelled trembling. Then the north chooses both of us, Sansa whispered. She lifted voice. Hear me. The north shall have two crowns, Wintersteel and Winterrose, united under one banner. I rule from Winterfell's halls. Arya rules the marchlands from Moat Cailin to White Harbor, bearing title protector of the neck and sword of the north. Any who question this pact quarrel with House Stark entire. Silence held, brittle. Then a spear-tapped shield. Another followed. Soon drums of approval thundered from both hosts. Some eager, some uncertain, but none louder than the sisters' combined will. Arya rose, blood dripping, and placed dagger in her sister's free hand. Keep it, she said. One blade for two wolves. Sansa smiled through tears. One pack. Snow fell harder, burying footprints, blurring lines until battlefield became blank parchment upon which new tales might be written. Wolves howled in far woods, neither victory nor grief, merely endless winter singing itself alive. The sisters stood side by side, and for the first time since crowns were forged, the North bowed not in fear but in fragile, feral hope. Snow muffled every sound the day after the duel, as though the world itself wished to hold its breath until two crowns found a way to beat as one. Dawn glimmered pearlescent over the camp on the rills, turning tents into misshapen ghosts. Sansa's host and Arya's pack still faced each other across the trampled field, but helmets had lifted, blades had sheathed. Men stood rubbing frost from mail and wondering whether this quiet was truce or coil-taut prelude to fresh slaughter. Arya rose from her cot in the Wolf Den's command pavilion before the embers had fully died. The cut at her temple throbbed beneath a strip of doeskin, and the gash in her palm reopened whenever she flexed her fingers, but pain sharpened thought. She dressed in boiled leather jerkin, left the circlet on a low stool, and slipped into the violet half-light that presaged sunrise. Outside, Mira Reed waited with two swamp spearmen and a mug of willow bark tea that smelled like boiled moss. "Wine would taste better," Arya muttered. "Wine would dull your step." Mira offered the cup anyway. Lords Glover and Serwyn convene inside the old smithy. They expect answers. "So do I." Arya drank, grimacing, then strode toward the dark bulk of the smithy. The building had been cold a decade. Its stone walls trapped her breath in swirling clouds as she entered. Torch flame licked soot-black rafters. Glover, Serwyn, and young Rusk the Tumbleton killer stood around a scratched oak table where an unrolled hide displayed 3 painted rivers and a dozen red tokens. "They're Sansa's scouts," Glover said, tapping a cluster of tokens near Widow's Watch. "Hunting our supply lines." His beard was crusted with rime, and his eyes glittered with sleepless frustration. "If they'll not trust the pact, we'd best show fangs." Arya studied the map. "Pull back 2 leagues. Leave empty pots boiling on every abandoned hearth. When scouts creep in, capture one alive. A living tongue carries fear truer than a corpse." Serwyn's breath hitched. "Fear alone will not feed us." Wintertown exports slowed when White Harbor locked itself. "We have grain for 3 fortnights. My sister's granaries hold double that." Arya traced a thin blue line, the King's Road, up toward Winterfell, and neighbors to the east still trade through Nowhere Pass. "Mira, send 3 riverboats along the shivering shore. Load them with herring salted to the bone. If we pay twice the fare rate, every fisherwife in Skagos will risk Narrow's ice for more." Rusk chuckled, dark and hoarse. "Gold and terror, the twin reigns of kingdoms." "Not kingdoms," Arya corrected. "Survival." She rolled the hide, tucked it under one arm. "Hold fast. The snow may hush the field, but weather is only one kind of storm." In Sansa's tent, the mood was scarcely warmer. Brienne knelt by the iron brazier, coaxing flame from damp birch splints. Steam rose from pots of larded oats. The queen herself ignored the offering. She sat, wrapped in a sable cloak, eyes on the supple leather letter she had penned in the night. It contained 3 demands for her sister, demands that might yet spare scores of lives. Shared levies for road clearing, open toll gates at the neck, and an oath that no wild wolf banner would ride south of Moat Cailin without Winterfell's leave. Lord Royce of the Vale shifted his weight near the entrance, steel-shod boots creaking. "Your Grace, Hard Vale knights grow restless. They did not march north to cower under tents while wolves sniffed their horseflesh. They marched to keep men safe, not to wet southern steel with northern blood." Sansa sealed the letter with crimson wax. "If I order them home, will they obey?" Royce glanced at the canvas, where frost had crusted the edges. "Command, and I will carve discipline into any who waver." Sansa's smile held more sorrow than warmth. "I will not carve loyalty into men who have shown it honest. You will remain but speak to their captains. Tell them swords will be sheathed until snow melt." She pressed the sealed letter into Brienne's gauntlet. "Ride to the Wolf Den, hand this to Arya yourself." Brienne's broad shoulders set. "If she refuses, then remind her of the lemon cake she once stole." A thin quaver surfaced in Sansa's throat. Sometimes memory is sharper than dagger. Brienne found the ride both familiar and bleak. The field where the duel had left sister against sister now held only the churned remnants of hooves. Wolves, real wolves, had circled in the night and licked at blood patches until flakes hid their prints. The path to the wolf den cut through wind-scoured grass. Arrow slits followed her progress, and she felt the prickle of unseen archers. When gate chains rattled open, Arya stood inside, bathed in smoke from guttering pitch torches. The girl looked smaller without her crown, but shadows in her gaze made her seem older than kingdoms. Brienne dismounted slowly, removed helm. "I bring terms," she said, extending the letter. Arya took it, lifted the wax toward a torch, and regarded the direwolf impression like one might a coin from another empire. "She writes fair words, and you bleed fair steel," Brienne answered. "Both of you want the same thing. Let this arguing go no further." Arya's jaw tensed. "I want the North alive and steel-taut. Sansa wants it whole and gentle. Blades and lullabies seldom share a cradle. Yet sisters do." Brienne placed gauntlet upon Arya's uninjured forearm. "I once swore to protect both of you, even against each other." Arya's brow rose. "Would you kill me if I refused her terms?" "No," Brienne's voice was firm as winter root. "I would die before that day came, but I would stand between you until no sword could reach either heart." The Wolf Queen's eyes softened by a hair's width. She unrolled the parchment, read swiftly, then folded it into thirds. "Tell Sansa I will open the toll gates and send wagons of grain by Vale Knight's escort. But the neck remains mine to hold as I see fit. No lord from White Harbor to Last Hearth will pass without letting their own blood touch the marsh water." She pressed the letter back, fresh ink scrawled beside Sansa's neat script. A lone wolf print, smeared crimson from the cut on her palm. Brienne closed fingers around the pledge. "This may be peace." Arya turned toward the dark corridor leading deeper into the jail, or the mournful lull between verses of a longer song. 2 weeks later, thaw crept over the neck. No spring, merely a sly loosening of ice around reed bases. Traders began moving again. A convoy escorted by Vale Lancers rode south bearing barrels of grain and a crate of lemon cake Sansa had baked herself. Arya met the riders near the standing stones, ignoring snowmelt mud sucking at her boots. She accepted the cakes silently, then handed each knight a tiny leather pouch. Inside lay a single wolf thong, cleaned and polished. "A token," she said. "Wear it on your next passage. The neck knows its own." Word spread of the exchange, and soon men at hearths from White Harbor to Last River were debating whether the sisters' pact would hold. Some said it softened harsher talk. Others claimed it was the lull before a blood tide. Still others, seated at cramped tavern benches, murmured of darker tidings. Ironborn raiders harrying Bear Island shores. A shadow fleet glimpsed off Flint's finger. Ravens lost between Carhold and Shadowmoor. Winter kept secrets. It also unearthed them. 3 nights before the new moon, a longship ran aground on the shale shoals of the Lonely Light. Survivors staggered into dawn with tales of iron men bearing torches the color of balefire, led by a woman whose smile was as bitter as brine. The story reached White Harbor on salt-burned lips. Asha Greyjoy had broken the peace of the Kingsmoot and outfitted a drift fleet of 30 ships, all bound for the north. Scouts spotted her sails bent west of the Cape Kraken, where the Bay of Ice offered poor defenses and rich plunder. But plunder, Arya thought when the raven perched atop her chair, might be only the spear's tip. Ironborn captains loved salt and iron both. Her own marshlands were dotted with unguarded kipper villages and skiff yards ripe for taking. In the Wolf Den's council chamber she unrolled salt-wrinkled charts of the coastline. Wylus Manderley argued for muster at White Harbor's seawalls rather than spreading thin across inlets. Mira said the Crannog boats could slip behind iron ships like eel through net, hairy supply barges. Rusk advocated ambush at sea, wildfire jars catapulted from refitted cogs. Arya listened, palm pressed to her circlet lying on the table, the obsidian wolf cool against skin. "If Asha Greyjoy cuts through to Bear Island, she will find cubs unguarded," she said at last. "Lady Lyanna Mormont is still a child despite her fury. We sail tonight, swamp boats to Huger Point, Manderley cogs north along the coast, meet at Stony Shore." "How many men?" asked Wylus. Enough to bleed iron. She tapped the dagger's pommel, then looked at Mira. Send Crow to Winterfell. Tell Sansa Greyjoy sails north. Ask if her banners will join ours, or dig graves when we fail. Sansa's response arrived on wings brittle with frost. House Stark would send 400 bowmen and Brienne with 200 Vale lances. They would march to Long Sister and board fisher cogs pressed into service. It was more than Arya had hoped, yet perhaps less than she needed. As the Marsh fleet drifted north under storm-heavy clouds, Arya found herself standing at the prow once more. Memory tugged. The first time the sail filled, the scent of pitch and green pine carried her toward conquest. Tonight the air smelled of salt iron and distant fire. She wondered whether it was fear or simply the taste of open sea. Reed joined her, gray cloak flapping like a tatty gull. "Winter ends wars," he muttered. "Yet here we ride it to fresh battleground." "The world ends wars," Arya said, "and starts them again. My task is only to keep the north breathing between cycles." Lightning forked low across the horizon, revealing black waves flecked white. Amid their troughs shapes moved, slender hulls, sails patched with drift netting. Ironborn, scouting. Arya's heart drummed steadier than the ocean's roar. She turned to the first officer. "Quarter sail, hold position. Lamps shuddered. Let the dark cover us." Across the roiling water, Manderley's bigger cogs did the same, their silhouettes lost against jagged cliffs. Moonrise returned a thin silver edge to the world. The Iron Fleet slid nearer, serpent shapes gilded faintly. Arya counted banners. Kraken on black, Kraken on red. A striped sail she did not know. One mast carried a tattered gray flag with a wolf drawn in dark pitch. No sigil she recognized. Perhaps a taunt. Rusk's whisper reached her elbow. Boarding hooks first or firepot hail? Neither. Arya's mind raced backward through Braavosi whispers and faceless rituals, to a story a Bravo had told of Tyroshi night tactics. Silent coracles, one assassin each, climbing anchor ropes. "We let them anchor, then we climb." Reed frowned. "Coracles in this surf? Swampers call this mild." She glanced again at the oncoming prows. Fetch frogskin hulls. 6 per boat. No metal, no light. An hour later water slapped the sides of 16 narrow boats lined with tar-sealed leather. Froth licked edges. Surf hissed like angry cats. Arya crouched at the bow of the lead craft, dagger strapped to thigh, needle across her back. The circlet she left behind, resting on cabin bunk. Crowns weighed down swimmers. Ironborn anchors splashed, chains rattling. Oars ceased. Crews shouted over wind, laughter harsh. The smell of roasted gull wafted. They believed themselves unseen, unstoppable. Arya's coracles skirted under lee shadows, bows silent. She reached the first anchor chain, hooked glove over cold iron, and signaled. 12 forms followed, scaling hand over hand. The deck above clanged as a drunken sailor staggered near the rail. Arya froze, pressed cheek into wet tar, listened to his muttered curse about weak-bladdered gods. When his steps faded, she vaulted the gunwale, rolling behind a stack of water casks. Reed's daughter rose beside her, throwing knife clenched. The rest unfolded in fever pulses, Mira's knife burying itself in the lookout's spine. Rusk vaulting hatch combing, hammering 2 startled reavers to the planks with axe. Arya darting through ropes, slitting the throat of a helmsman before the man's lips formed an alarm. Wildfire jar placed at the base of the mast, wick short but unlit, threat more potent than use. She left a sigil painted in the man's blood on the quarterdeck. Wolfhead blade. Within 15 heartbeats silence reclaimed the vessel. They bound 6 prisoners, flung for corpses, shoved 3 barrels of stolen northern ale off the side to lighten load. Then they hoisted a lantern with a slitted shutter. 1 blink, pause, 2 blinks, signal to the other coracles that Kraken's daughter herself was on the flagship, 2 ships astern. Storm howl swallowed nearly all sound, but from the second prize they captured, a broad-keel longship, they coaxed a low war horn moan. The Ironborn thought it their own, replied in celebration. Confusion would embrace them too late. The approach to Asha's flagship was blood-slick business. A midship guard spotted silhouettes, raised cry, arrows hissed in return. Arya leapt over railing, landed amid coil of wet rope, dashed forward. Asha Greyjoy herself strode from cabin clad in sea-green mail, storm lantern in fist, axe in other, eyes bright with thrill when she saw the girl. "Starkling whelp," she snarled. "We were never properly introduced." "Names are for kin," Arya said. "Not corpses." Needle flashed, Asha's axe blocked, sparks leapt sideways. Rain hammered decks like thrown gravel. Their duel carved a savage circle in the storm-lit dark. Axe arcs thudding mast, sword sip-quick stings at wrists. Arya's lighter frame darted beyond chopping swings, but Asha's reach forced her sideways. Twice they locked, axe haft and blade trembling between grips. Asha's breath stank of rum and seaweed. Arya smelled copper and rain. When Asha feinted overhand and tried a low sweep, Arya hopped inside, driving dagger up beneath the raider's gorget. Chain links parted. Breath hissed through bloody foam. Asha staggered, grin fading, though defiance still lit her one good eye. "Kraken tastes wolf," she wheezed. "Choke on it," Arya replied and twisted the knife. When Asha fell, the deck nearly fell with her. Ironborn morale cracked audible as mast under gale. Reed's rangers swarmed, binding wrists, tossing axes into the sea. Wildfire jar settled in Asha's captain's cabin, a green threat that glimmered even after the wick was snuffed. Dawn painted ragged clouds mauve when Arya raised gray sail upon the captured flagship. Wolf blade sigil hung beneath. Across jagged surf, the surviving Iron Fleet broke scatterwise, fleeing for open water or hugging shoals where wind howled merciless. She did not pursue. Instead, she ordered anchors broken, sails reefed, and horns sounded thrice, summoning Manderly's heavier cogs to convoy prisoners home. When Mira asked why she spared the longships, Arya stooped and dipped gloved fingers into storm runoff mingled with raider blood. Fear spreads faster than ash on wind. Let every survivor carry word. The North hunts now. It was noon before Sansa's vessels arrived, veil sails white as dove wings. They found smoke drifting from two ironborn wrecks beached upon basalt spurs, masts charred but intact. Brienne guided her ship between reefs, heart hammering at thought of arriving too late, but a Manderly banner signaled all was done. When Arya rowed across the gap between their prows, Brienne glimpsed the younger Stark drenched in salt spray, hair whipping, shoulders squared like a woman thrice her years. Blood dotted her brow, but eyes were unclouded. She hoisted herself onto the Vale Cog's ladder, accepted a cloak from a squire. "We've won the shore," Arya reported. "Asha Greyjoy lies cold on her deck. Survivors sail south under Hawk escort." Brienne exhaled. "The North will sing of this for 100 years. Arya's lips thinned. "Songs won't feed widows. We bury our own, patch hulls, then march every iron he has back to the sea." She met Sansa that evening on Bear Island's wind-whipped strand, beneath a sky still bruised from storm. The sisters clasped arms, awkward, earnest. Lyanna Mormont, fierce in bear pelt despite tear-streaked cheeks, thanked them both with hard nods and promises that House Mormont would never forget. A night-long council convened in a hall smelling of pine resin and wet fur. There, amid crackle of hearths and muttered grief, the sisters signed a second pact, a joint shield against foreign sails. Sansa pledged funds to build watchtowers along coastlines. Arya pledged garrison of marsh archers in each. The words were written into calfskin, sealed with wolf blood wax. Outside the hall, snow began again. Gentle this time, as though sky's rage spent itself. Winter weeks flew, a blur of hammered planks and quiet burials. Ironborn threat receded yet did not vanish. The Greyjoys would lick wounds and dream anew, but for now the North breathed easier. Grain wagons rolled across the King's Road with fewer delays. Trade caravans braved the shivering shore, escorted by mixed patrols wearing both the silver dire wolf of Winterfell and the iron-tooth wolf of the Neck. Back in Winterfell, Sansa opened the old Godswood to Arya's marsh lords for a council seldom seen. A meeting beneath the heart tree where no raven sat sentinel, no maester inked record. Glover spoke of roads, Reed of waterways, Manderley of fleets. Serwyn whispered of whispers, southern envoys sniffing for cracks. Rusk said little, but his glower assured that cracks would meet iron. When dawn bled rose through the leafless branches, Sansa stepped forward. The north stands, but storm clouds gather south. King's Landing boasts new wealth in coffers of Highgarden. Riverlords fight over castles like starving dogs. If war drifts north again, we hold line together or fall peacewise. Arya nodded. Then bind ourselves stronger. A council of two is fragile. How many voices? Asked Reed. 5. Winterfell Queen, Wolfblade Protector, Sea Lord, Hill Chief, Marsh Elder. She looked to each. Equal vote, equal oath. Glover scratched beard. And if vote splits? Then winter decides, Arya said. We cast bones to snow. The pattern the gods shape becomes final word. Some chuckled, thinking jest. But when Arya produced a pouch of polished wolf bones and poured them into her hand, silence claimed the glade. The bones were carved with runes, edges blackened. She lifted them to the weirwood's face, then let them fall. They landed in a star shape. 1 star for 1 north, she said. So speak the trees. Sansa's breath misted. So let it be. They sealed the Five-Fong Council amid breath-white silence. Ravens stirred overhead, as though curious. Plans grew like spring shoots beneath snow cover. In the neck, Arya oversaw construction of timber palisades along causeway mouths. Nothing tall, yet each lined with hidden pitfalls and watchposts where bog-oil cauldrons rested above murder holes. She sent Mira south to scour the riverlands for silent sisters willing to serve as healers in the marsh. For war spared no flesh where rot and fever thrived. In Winterfell, Sansa reopened the crypt for public mournings, letting small folk kneel beside kings of old. She believed grief shared wove stronger loyalty than fear. She also drafted new trade accords, offering Riverland's mills low tolls if they shipped flour north before first thaw. Some maesters whispered she bribed them with grain. She called it insurance against hunger's mutiny. Across the coast, Barbary Dustin raised a small fleet of barrow sleds, shallow draft skiffs able to cross frozen rivers in packs. She named them Frost Runners and painted wolf blade sigils on their prows. The north stirred like a bear in den, muscles tensing for spring even while snow still lay heavy. Not all hearts welcomed twin crowns. Deep within the last river gullies, a band of hard men loyal to none but coin began taking toll from caravans. They claimed no banner, though some wore scraps of flayed man's sigil. Bolton remnants perhaps, though none admitted it. When news reached the Five-Fong Council, Arya and Sansa debated at length by Raven's Wing whether to send knights or send knives. Knights, Sansa argued. Prove law lives by daylight. Knives, Arya replied. Teach fear that hides in shadows and speak a language bandits understand. In the end, they sent both. Brienne commanding 20 Veil Lancers, Arya herself leading 5 faceless disciples who now answered her call. 3 nights before the appointed raid, the bandits vanished. Their fires burned still, horses hobbled and whickering, but men gone. The next morning, 5 severed ears dangled from tree branches along the road, each pierced by a needle-thin hole. The Lancers rode on unchallenged. Rumor traveled ahead of them. By the time they reached the last river ford, villagers dared display double banners on their lintels. No tax collectors came thereafter. That line between justice and menace thins by the day, Brienne warned Arya beside campfire after. Sparks rose, mingling with snow. Arya merely stirred the flames. Better a thin line than no line at all. Messages arrived from across the world. Samwell Tarly, maester of the Night Fort, wrote of wildlings settling in ruined keeps, learning to sow barley in permafrost, asking only freedom from Queen's taxes. Sansa wished to encourage the settlements, hoping trade of furs and ice iron might enrich both. But Arya worried about gates unguarded behind her marsh. They compromised. Sansa granted the wildlings charter to mine tin beneath Frostfang Pass, and Arya sent marsh archers to train them in bowcraft. both favor and leash in same stroke. From King's Landing, a gold seal's letter arrived addressed to their graces of the north. The small council under new Queen Myrcella requested neutral passage for envoys to treat about obsidian trade. Sansa read it with careful joy. Arya smirked. Obsidian once meant dragon glass, she said. Now they call it fair market goods. Let them pay, Sansa answered. The North can build on coin earned honest. Arya raised brow. Honest coin from snakes? Snakes keep to their pits when fed. Arya left Winterfell that night, unanswered. She rode south instead of north, following old instincts. When snakes send smiles, search for fangs. Near the Maidenpool crossroads, she donned a new face. Plain merchant boy, nose crooked. She slipped through Sellsword campfires where tongues wagged easier than ale spilled. There she learned of a sell-sail captain hired by Queen Myrcella, a Braavosi named Relio Quarth, tasked with probing White Harbor's lower defenses, while envoys kept northern eyes inland. Paid saboteurs. They meant to burn cogs under moonless sky, blame it on Greyjoy remnants. Arya followed Relio south to Maidenpool docks. She watched him bribe a portmaster, saw the tally of black powder kegs loaded into false bottom. She pried free a single plank after nightfall, left behind a wolf tooth and 3 words carved into hull. Night sees all. The ship sailed at dawn. She let it go. Fear carried further than rope. On her return north, she passed ravaged farmland where winter still clawed earth. Small folk camped in burnt shells of barns. She shared her bread, asked their tales. Each story was old. A child lost to fever, a husband to river raid. But one tale of a woman from Cobbler's Square who swore she saw a black dragon above Maidenpool stirred fire under Arya's ribs. Dragons were gone. Drogon had flown east, Regal and Viserion dead. Yet the rumor spread faster than wind. She listened, heart uneasy. Where rumor smolders, spark may leap to forest. By the time she crossed the neck again, stars wheeled in clearer skies. Northern lights shimmered on horizon. She found Sansa at Winterfell's outer yard overseeing repairs to splintered battlements. Without greeting, Arya dismounted and produced a simple scrap of folded sailcloth. Inside lay an iron coin carved with Braavosi face. A token, she said. A warning. Sansa ran thumb over the coin's ridges. So much steel for one north. It will not be the steel that breaks us, Arya murmured. It will be words dipped in honey. She looked around at the courtyard where men hammered planks, women hauled salt sacks. We must cut tongues before they rear fangs. Sansa sighed. Perhaps you see daggers where I see mistrust yet untested. But bring me proof, and I will sharpen my own. Arya felt warmth coil beneath ribs, something between gratitude and caution. She stepped closer. When trouble comes, call me. Raven, horn, dream. I will hear. I believe you, Sansa whispered. She placed the coin in her sister's glove, squeezed wounded palm. But let us try peace a little longer. Men deserve calm between storms. Arya's gaze drifted skyward. Snow softened again, lazy flakes swirling like parchment scraps. Storms make calm meaningful, she said. But I will try. Spring's first thaw arrived weeks later than memory promised. Yet when it came it roared. River ice cracked like thunderbolts, and pine spears fell from slope faces. The neck turned from silver to deep moss. The white knife burst its banks, carrying broken hulls of winter barges to sea. Small folk cheered the mud under heels, for mud meant tilt soil, sowing hope. Arya stood on Moat Caelan's parapet, watching cranes wool over brackish pools. Reeds bent in winds that bore scent of pine resin rather than snow. She felt the world breathe, but even as warmth seeped through her leather sleeves, memory of dragon rumor gnawed. She touched the dagger at hip, felt the old Valyrian steel pulse with the life it had taken. Then she walked to the heart tree transplanted months ago, knelt at its roots. The carved face wept still, though tears were sap-hardened in cold nights. She pressed brow to bark. Old gods, she whispered, keep watch while wolves roam. She thought of Sansa in Winterfell's great hall, of Reed in his mist-shrouded isle, of Manderley's flagship sailing the Bight, of Brienne polishing Oathkeeper. She saw gray sails approaching from far horizons, some friendly, some cloaked. She rose, lifted circlet onto her brow. Obsidian wolf glinted black. Overhead, a raven cut the warm wind, cawing thrice. Its shadow passed across the courtyard stones like ink spilled upon parchment, then vanished into the brightening air. Arya watched it go, muscles poised between peace and purpose, and wondered which path the gods had chosen for tomorrow's dawn.